You know, it's pretty crazy that a system that hasn't even been announced yet formally is already having all of this sort of buzz and speculation and articles written about it. But the Nintendo Switch 2, I mean, it is what it is. It's going to be a wild ride up until this system is officially unveiled. People are going to talk about it. And of course, there is an interest in it. So RGT is going to get a piece of the pie. I have 4 different things to talk about today with Switch 2 stuff that has happened over the weekend and this morning. So we're just going to pretty much talk about it. If this is your first time here and you enjoy speculation and crap like that, make sure you hit the subscribe button, like the video as well. But let's go ahead and hop straight into it. So the first story we're going to talk about is a story that's posted over on My Nintendo News. 3 of them will be from My Nintendo News. You can guess what the other 2 are because they're right there. But this is basically coming to us from Tom Henderson, who has a pretty solid track record. Gaming insider Tom Henderson, who has a good track record when it comes to leak, has stated on social media platform X, we still call it Twitter around these parts, that Nintendo fans should expect to see a lot of trailers mentioning launching on the Xbox Series XS, PlayStation 5, Nintendo Switch 2, and PC for third-party games in the next 12 to 18 months. Basically saying that in a tweet here that was from the 30th, so a couple of days ago. Really excited for the Nintendo Switch 2 and its tech. We will see launching on Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 5, Nintendo Switch 2, and PC a heck of a lot in 12 to 18 months. Let's tone down the language there. Heck, come on, man. We can't say that on the social medias, but yes. I mean, okay. Like, is that really a revelation or something like that? Like, we see that with current Nintendo Switch games. There are games that come out on the Switch but end up skipping the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, you know, like Mortal Kombat 1. Obviously, the quality wasn't as good on the Nintendo Switch version of the game as it is on other platforms. I still don't think it's as bad as the media is making it out to be. I mean, you could take things out of context with screenshots and stuff like that. Again, it doesn't look as good, but the gameplay is still pretty fun. I mean, I spent $100 on it. But yes, like, this to me, kind of a bit of a non-story. Like, oh, okay, like, I guess this is something you could potentially get a little bit excited about, but for me, it's like, you're gonna see this, of course you are, you know, eventually when the system itself is actually announced. The system has to be announced for a company to put that it's going to be coming to that system. They can obviously work behind closed doors and stuff like that, bringing games over to a platform, but until that platform is actually announced, you're not going to talk about it. Like, you're going to break NDAs and embargo agreements that you've made with Nintendo if you say something like this. I don't know. You know, this to me wasn't a huge deal. Next story, though, it's getting a little bit more interesting. A leaker says that Capcom is preparing Monster Hunter 6 for Nintendo Switch 2. This information is coming to us from Nintendo Universe editor Necrolippy? I don't know if I'm saying that right. Apologies if I'm not. But allegedly, Monster Hunter 6 will be launching on Nintendo's new system alongside of the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. Now, when you look at the Monster Hunter franchise, obviously right now, it's way more popular than it ever really has been. Monster Hunter Rise, Monster Hunter World really sort of brought a whole new dynamic into Monster Hunter games and Monster Hunter fandom. You know, it became really popular. World was extremely successful. Rise was ridiculously successful. So it would make sense that they would want, Capcom, of course, being the company in question, that they would want to put their games on both platforms. You know, World was on the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. It did really well. Rise was on the Nintendo Switch. It did really well. So I'm sure some brass at Capcom is sitting back, you know, sipping a latte or something. They're like, yo, we're selling Monster Hunter on all systems. Why don't we just do a multi-platform release if the Nintendo Switch 2 is capable of doing what we're trying to do on the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X version? Obviously, I'm not expecting the same visual fidelity. The Switch 2 version potentially will be a bit downgraded. How much the potential of DLSS will play a role in that as far as, you know, limiting the gap, that kind of remains to be seen. I think a lot of people are indeed very hopeful about that thing. But this to me, once again, you know, it kind of seems like a no-brainer sort of situation. Is this really a leak? Is this really, you know, information that you're getting from someone potentially inside of Capcom? Or is this just a plan that makes sense. Like, I feel like if I came out and said, hey, Nintendo Switch 2 is going to have a Super Mario game. Like, am I leaking it? Are people going to make videos about me, you know, talking about that? Like, our website's going to run articles talking about the fact that I said a Mario game is coming to Nintendo Switch 2? Or is it a little bit of common sense? You know, that's all I'm saying. These first two stories, they kind of are contingent on common sense for me. You know, this all sort of lines up. This all sort of makes sense as to something that will be happening. But the other two stories are where things get potentially a little bit more interesting. Rumor: Square Enix isn't looking to bring Final Fantasy VII Remake to other platforms. This is basically coming to us from Nate the Hate, Nate Drake, whatever you want to call him, my co-host on the Game and Talk podcast over on the Spawncast Network, spawncastnetwork.com. Trust me, people, if you're not a member of the Spawncast Network, you're going to want to get in, because all those people always say, well, we want to be on the shows, we want to do this, that, and the other. There might be something coming for that very, very soon. There might be a whole shift in how the Spawncast is handled on Saturday nights, and you'll want to be a member of the Spawncast Network if you want to take advantage of that stuff. But Nate is basically saying Final Fantasy VII Remake is not a current plan. Could it happen eventually? Sure. Is it an active plan at this moment? No. A Switch 2 release in the exact same way that an Xbox release does. If Square wants to do it, they can and will, but no such plan exists at the present. So once again, that's something that I feel like is worth talking about, because obviously out of Gamescom, we heard that Final Fantasy VII Remake was potentially running on the Nintendo Switch 2 and was shown behind closed doors. And that really put up a lot of red flags for me. Not only because of the fact that we're acting like that wasn't a PlayStation 4 game to begin with. So, you know, okay, a PlayStation 4 game could be coming to the system. You know, is that really a big deal? But the bigger thing about Final Fantasy VII Remake, of course, being the fact that this is not available on Xbox yet. And when you look at the Square Enix and Xbox relationship, it's obviously getting a lot better. But this was an exclusive, timed exclusive, allegedly, for the PlayStation family of systems. And, you know, supposedly it was like a 1-year exclusivity, but then it ended up coming out on PC, but it never came out on Xbox. And they had obviously never tried it on the Nintendo Switch either. I just feel like, you know, maybe when the trilogy is complete, you know, when they have, I'm guessing they're trying to do 3 parts of this. Maybe when the trilogy is complete, then you'll see like a collector's edition on the Xbox and the Switch. So that way, or the Switch 2, I should say. That way you have all the games all together, all at once. You could play them all the way through, kind of like a Kingdom Hearts sort of thing. But to me, it doesn't make sense to put, because if you're going to put one of them, you have to put all of them. You know, obviously they are standalone games, but they're standalone games that are contingent, that are very story driven, and they're contingent on the Final Fantasy VII lore. So to me, you know, I think this makes more sense than that game coming as its own individual thing on the Nintendo Switch 2. I think down the road, Square Enix is going to do a port onto Xbox and the Switch 2, and they're going to have all 3 games available, so that way you get the complete story. But it just doesn't make a lot of sense right now for that particular game, especially with Rebirth coming up. You know, that's going to be like, what would that say? You release Rebirth on the PlayStation 5, and then later on in the year, like, oh, we're bringing Remake to Nintendo Switch 2. It's like, does that have the same sort of pizzazz? Like, just buy it on the PlayStation 4 for $10 if you have one. So I thought this was interesting. And our final story is coming to us from Nash Weedle, El Analyst de Leaks. I believe that means leak analyst. And you know, when it comes to Nash Weedle, people love to talk about his stuff because it sounds, or I should say their stuff. I don't know what they identify as. It's 2023. Got to protect my ass here. I don't know what they, you know, when people see Nash Weedle stuff, they love to talk about it because it's exciting stuff, because a lot of it is telling you kind of stuff that you want to hear on the situation. This is allegedly happening from Tokyo Game Show, things that were happening behind closed doors, like we heard with stuff like Gamescom. So we're going to go over this stuff. Thankfully, they summarized it in the initial tweet. I am translating this from Spanish to English because I do not speak Spanish. I failed Spanish 3 miserably, and I just cheated in Spanish 1 and Spanish 2. So the Leak Express special from Tokyo Game Show coming over from Nash Weedle, who, by the way, might I remind everyone, said that Google was working with Nintendo on a standalone VR headset. So please keep that in mind. Super Mario Brothers Wonder is the beginning of a saga, meaning that Super Mario Brothers Wonder is not going to be a one and done game. It will end up being a bit of a new lineage of Super Mario games. Allegedly behind closed doors, it was said that there were things that they wanted to implement into Super Mario Brothers Wonder that they couldn't, that they plan on doing in the future. I mean, Nintendo usually does this with Mario games. It's usually like a run of at least 2 games that are kind of very similar, you know, and you've seen it a lot more, I guess, you know, with certain titles, with the 2D titles more so than the 3D titles. But that, to me, you know, okay, like it could be the start of a saga. You know, maybe they do another one like they did with the new Super Mario Brothers series and stuff like that, because that seems what Nintendo likes to do. They take a game from Mario and then they kind of build upon it. But, you know, is that really a leak? Why would they be talking about that before the game is even out? I don't know. Panic Button, it now works with Switch 2. I have a big problem with this because I don't feel like Panic Button, like a representative for Panic Button, would just happen to be at Tokyo Game Show and be like, hey, stranger, we're working on some Nintendo Switch 2 stuff. Like, what? Like, what? Why is that a thing? Panic Button, of course, is known for their ports to the Nintendo Switch. So why would we be talking, you know, I mean, obviously ports are going to come to the Nintendo Switch 2, but that just, to me, seems like a very weird thing to say, and a very specific thing to say that you can easily trace. You can't trace Super Mario Brothers Wonder being the beginning of a saga. Like you could say, oh, that was, you know, ex Nintendo employee, not meaning X as in, you know, no longer with the company, but like the mystery, like Mr. X on The Simpsons. You could say, you know, okay, well, this was a mystery Nintendo employee, but with Panic Button, how many people from Panic Button were at Tokyo Game Show? How many people at Panic Button were at Tokyo Game Show talking about things? That feels like something that could be easily traced. So I think that's a risky thing to put out there into the open. And from what I've heard, just, you know, around the water cooler talk, that's not actually a thing. So then you kind of got to look at this list and be like, well, wait, is anything even worth talking about on this list? And when you see the final 2 things that are talked about in this list, we're going back to what we were talking about with the first 2 stories that we had. Some people have already seen Metroid Prime 4. Xbox staff was at one of the Switch 2 demos. Some people have already seen Metroid Prime 4. Yeah, I'm sure they have. Like the people that are working on the game, you know, like the people that are currently working on the game have probably seen the game, and I'm sure some people at Nintendo have probably seen the game to see the progress of the game, to see what this game is bringing to the table in terms of graphics, in terms of gameplay, in terms of evolution, because this has been, you know, a much maligned project. There's been high points, there's been low points, mostly low points, honestly, but that to me is just a very blanket, vague statement that doesn't really have, you know, a whole lot of weight to it. I've actually had some stuff sent to me that was supposedly a Metroid Prime 4 boss battle in a very, very early stage, and I would not be surprised if that is actually implemented into the final game. Like, I'm actually looking for that boss to be in Metroid Prime 4, just because of the way that the information was presented to me, the story behind it, and then the wireframe. It was essentially wireframe stuff, but the wireframe stuff that I saw from this footage. And I fully expect that to be in the game, because obviously they are showing the game to certain people. And then Xbox staff was at one of the Switch 2 demos. Okay, is this a revelation? Like, companies work with other companies. Obviously Xbox and Nintendo have a strong relationship, more so than Xbox and PlayStation, more so than PlayStation and Nintendo do. Xbox brings games over to the Nintendo Switch 2. Even if you strip that away, it's a game show. You know what I'm saying? The other competitors, the other system manufacturers, the other video game companies are going to look at what other companies are doing. They're the ones that are going to be at these events, not some random employee who's just gabbing about how Super Mario Brothers Wonder is a saga and Panic Button is working on the Switch 2. Like, no, I don't see that as being a potential thing. I'm not trying to discredit Nash Weedle. I know they have been right about some things, but I'm always trying to look at these things with a skeptical eye, because you're going to have people, I just hit my microphone, I apologize. You're going to have people that are going to come out and act like this is fact. You know what I'm saying? They're going to say this is all factual stuff. This is what's actually happening. you know, and this, that, and the other. And it's like the reality of it is this is really just speculation based on vague information that we're getting from various sources that I feel like I could make predictions like this and then become true. And then am I a leaker? You know, am I an industry insider? No, I'm a man who talks to some people, of course. You know, I have some sources here and there, but for the most part, like, you know, it is what it is. I hear things go in one ear, out the other, because at the end of the day, this is all speculation. This is all just rumors running rampant. It's a lot of alliteration right there. But let me know what you're thinking of this stuff in the comments section down below. Are you completely sold on all this? Do you think this is all factual information? And if so, state your case in the comments as to why you think that. I didn't feel like being on camera today. I just got back from a doctor's appointment and I didn't shower beforehand, so I didn't feel like having a bright light blazing my eyes. So yeah, whatever. Anyways, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you're new, hit that subscribe button, like, comment, and share. Hit the bell as well. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.